Good afternoon, and welcome to today's discussion. We are here to explore a question that lies at the heart of educational debates. Are standardized tests an effective way to measure student learning? It's a topic that evokes strong opinions from educators, policymakers, parents, and students alike. Today, we hope to shed more light on its various facets. Joining us are two distinguished guests, Dr. Samuel Green, an educational policy analyst, who will argue in favor of standardized tests, and Ms. Olivia Chen, an experienced teacher, who will present arguments against the over-reliance on these assessments. Welcome to you both. Our debate will proceed with opening statements from each guest, followed by rebuttals, a moderated discussion, and finally, closing statements. Let's begin with Dr. Green's opening statement.
Thank you, Ms. Vance. It's a privilege to be here to discuss such a critical issue. Standardized tests, in my view, are an indispensable tool in our educational toolkit, providing an objective and consistent measure of student performance. Unlike subjective classroom assessments, which can vary significantly from one teacher or school to another, standardized tests offer a common benchmark. This consistency is paramount for fairness and for accurately gauging what students know and can do. Furthermore, they are crucial for ensuring accountability in our educational institutions and systems. The data derived from these tests can highlight areas where schools or specific programs are excelling, and, just as importantly, where they are falling short and require urgent improvement. This accountability extends to ensuring that all students, regardless of their background or location, are receiving a quality education. These tests also play a vital role in identifying students who may require additional support or intervention. By providing early indicators of learning difficulties or gaps, we can channel resources effectively and promote equity, ensuring that no child is left behind. This diagnostic capability is one of their most significant strengths. Finally, standardized tests offer a valuable benchmark for comparing student performance across different schools, districts, and even internationally. This comparability helps us understand broader educational trends, identify best practices, and ensure that our educational standards remain competitive and robust in a globalized world. Without such measures, we operate in a fog, unable to make informed, system-wide decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Now we turn to Ms. Olivia Chen for her opening statement.
Thank you, Ms. Vance and Dr. Green. While I acknowledge the intentions behind standardized testing, my experience as an educator has shown me their significant limitations and, often, detrimental effects on genuine student learning. Standardized tests, by their very nature, offer a narrow view of student capabilities. They predominantly assess a limited range of skills, often prioritizing rote memorization and procedural knowledge over critical thinking, creativity, complex problem-solving, or collaborative abilities, skills that are increasingly vital for success in the 21st century. The high-stakes nature of these tests induces significant stress and anxiety in students. I've seen firsthand how this pressure can negatively impact their performance on the test itself, not to mention their overall well-being and their intrinsic motivation to learn. Learning should be a joyful exploration, not a source of dread. Moreover, the intense pressure to perform well on these tests inevitably leads to, quote, teaching to the test. This means the curriculum becomes narrowed, focusing disproportionately on the specific content and formats covered by the test, thereby sacrificing a broader, deeper, and more enriching educational experience. Subjects like arts, humanities, and even in-depth scientific inquiry can be marginalized. I advocate for more holistic assessment methods. Portfolios, project-based learning, presentations, and ongoing formative assessments provide a much more comprehensive and authentic picture of student learning and growth. These methods nurture the skills we claim to value and allow students to demonstrate their understanding in diverse ways.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. We will now move to the first rebuttal. Dr. Green, you have the floor to respond to Ms. Chen's points.
Thank you. Ms. Chen raises valid concerns, particularly regarding, quote, teaching to the test and student stress. However, I believe these issues are not inherent flaws of standardized tests themselves, but rather reflections of how they are sometimes implemented or perceived. Regarding teaching to the test, it's important to distinguish between teaching to the test and teaching the content and skills that the test assesses. Well-designed, standardized tests should evaluate essential skills and core knowledge that are, or should be, fundamental components of any robust curriculum. If a test accurately measures critical thinking or analytical reading, then preparing students for it involves fostering those very skills, which is beneficial. The problem arises when tests are poorly designed or when the curriculum is excessively narrowed beyond what the test actually measures. Ms. Chen also mentioned the issue of potential bias. Test development is a rigorous, iterative process involving extensive reviews by experts from diverse backgrounds to minimize cultural, linguistic, or socioeconomic bias. No assessment is perfect, of course, but the aim is to achieve maximum objectivity and fairness. Continuous research and refinement are dedicated to improving their fairness. Finally, I must reiterate the necessity of a common yardstick. Without standardized measures, how do we reliably compare the effectiveness of different educational approaches or interventions? How do we ensure equity for students in under-resourced areas, or identify systemic issues that might be hindering learning on a large scale? While alternative assessments have their place, they often lack the scalability and comparability needed for these broader systemic evaluations.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Ms. Chen, your rebuttal?
Dr. Green speaks of objectivity, but I must challenge this notion. What standardized tests measure is often a very limited and specific facet of intelligence and learning. They tend to prioritize easily quantifiable knowledge, facts that can be recalled, procedures that can be replicated, over deeper conceptual understanding or the ability to apply knowledge in novel, complex situations. True learning is often messy, iterative, and deeply personal. It doesn't always fit neatly into a multiple-choice bubble. Consider skills like creativity, innovation, leadership, ethical reasoning, or effective collaboration. These are crucial for success in life and work, yet they are largely invisible to standardized tests. How can we claim a test is a comprehensive measure of student learning if it ignores these vital competencies? Furthermore, Dr. Green mentions that well-designed tests assess essential skills. But who decides what is essential, and is that definition universally applicable or culturally sensitive enough? The immense pressure on educators and schools to achieve high test scores often leads to a curriculum distorted by test preparation, not by genuine learning needs. This isn't about teaching essential skills. It's about teaching test-taking strategies. Valuable instructional time is diverted to practice tests and drills, diminishing opportunities for authentic inquiry, exploration, and the development of a genuine passion for learning. The human cost of this, in terms of student disengagement and teacher burnout, is substantial.
We are now moving into our moderated discussion segment. Dr. Green, Ms. Chen has compellingly described the significant stress and anxiety these tests can place on students. How do you propose we balance the valuable data these tests might provide with this undeniable human cost, particularly for younger or more vulnerable students?
That's a critical question, Ms. Vance. The well-being of students must always be a priority. Firstly, the way tests are administered and the climate surrounding them can significantly mitigate stress. We need to move away from a punitive, high-stakes only perception. Secondly, results should be used constructively to support students, not to label them. For younger students, tests should be developmentally appropriate, perhaps more formative, and less about ranking. It's about finding a balance, using test data as one piece of a larger puzzle, not the sole determinant of a child's potential or a school's quality.
Ms. Chen, your thoughts on Dr. Green's response?
While I appreciate Dr. Green's acknowledgement of student well-being, The reality on the ground is that the high-stakes nature is deeply embedded. As long as funding, school evaluations, and teacher performance are heavily tied to these scores, the pressure remains immense, regardless of attempts to create a less stressful climate. Developmentally appropriate testing for younger children is a step in the right direction, but the core issue is the overemphasis on a single metric. True balance is hard to achieve when one data point carries such disproportionate weight in the system.
Ms. Chen, Dr. Green emphasizes the importance of a common benchmark for ensuring equity and identifying schools or systems that might be underperforming on a large scale. If we were to move away from standardized tests, what specific, scalable mechanisms could replace them to fulfill this crucial role of ensuring accountability and equity?
That's a fair challenge. Replacing them wholesale overnight isn't the proposition, but rather diversifying our approach. We could implement a system of quote-to-quote-to sheer assessments, where a representative group of students is tested, rather than every single student, to gauge system health without the individual high-stakes pressure. Additionally, robust school quality review systems, incorporating qualitative data like classroom observations, portfolio reviews, and stakeholder surveys, students, parents, teachers, could provide richer, more nuanced accountability. It's more complex, yes, but potentially far more informative and equitable than relying on a single test score.
Dr. Green, your comment on Ms. Chen's proposed alternatives?
Ms. Chen's suggestions for sampling and enhanced school quality reviews have merit and are indeed part of discussions on evolving assessment. However, sampling might not provide the granular data needed to identify specific student groups within a school who require targeted support. And while qualitative reviews are valuable, they are resource-intensive and can introduce their own set of subjectivities and inconsistencies, if not extremely well-structured and moderated across diverse contexts. Achieving scalability and consistent application of such qualitative measures nationwide is a significant hurdle we haven't yet overcome.
Thank you both. We will now proceed to closing statements. Ms. Chen, please begin.
Throughout this discussion, I've highlighted the fundamental limitations of over-relying on standardized tests. They offer a restrictive lens on student ability, failing to capture the rich tapestry of skills, like creativity, critical analysis, and collaboration, that our students truly need. The immense pressure these tests create fosters anxiety, narrows the curriculum to, quote, teaching to the test, and ultimately can stifle the genuine love of learning we strive to cultivate in our classrooms. We've seen how this focus can disproportionately affect vulnerable students and lead to a reductionist view of education. I urge a paradigm shift. We need to move towards more student-centered, diverse, and holistic assessment approaches. This means valuing portfolios that showcase growth over time, project-based learning that demonstrates application of knowledge, and formative assessments that guide instruction in real time. My vision for the future of assessment is one where multiple forms of evaluation are thoughtfully integrated to understand and support each student's unique developmental journey comprehensively. It's about fostering deep learning and preparing students for a complex world, not just for a test. We must prioritize authentic learning experiences over standardized scores.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. Dr. Green, your closing statement?
Thank you. While I acknowledge the concerns raised by Ms. Chen and agree that no single test can be a perfect measure of all aspects of learning, standardized tests remain a vital instrument for specific, systemic objectives. Their utility in providing objective, comparable data for accountability and equity purposes on a large scale is currently unparalleled. They help us identify achievement gaps, ensure resources are directed where they are most needed, and hold educational systems accountable for serving all students effectively. Without them, we risk obscuring disparities and failing to address systemic weaknesses that can disadvantage entire communities. Standardized tests are not, and should never be, the sole measure of a student's worth or a school's quality. They are one tool among many. The challenge lies not in abolishing them, but in using them wisely as part of a balanced and comprehensive assessment system that also values teacher judgment, classroom-based assessments, and other measures of student progress. I believe standardized tests can and should continue to evolve, incorporating more performance-based tasks and leveraging technology to provide more nuanced insights. They must be thoughtfully integrated, their limitations acknowledged, and their results used to empower educators and support students, not merely to rank and sort. Their responsible use is key to a fair and effective education system.
Thank you, Dr. Green, and thank you, Ms. Chen, for your insightful and constructive contributions to this important debate. You've both articulated your positions with clarity and passion. Today's discussion has underscored the core tension in educational assessment: the need for reliable, large-scale data for accountability and equity, versus the desire for an individualized, holistic understanding of each student's learning journey and unique talents. There are clearly no easy answers, and the path forward likely involves a nuanced integration of different approaches. We encourage our audience to reflect on the arguments presented today and to continue considering the complexities of how we measure and foster student learning. Thank you for